This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
You've tuned into a conversation between myself and Sascha Gerstner from Helloween. The catalyst for the chat is due to Helloween's brand new studio album for 2021. It's a self-titled effort, and it will see light of day via Nuclear Blast on June 18. A couple of quick points before we dive into the conversation. Up top, we talk about Sasha's alter ego, Palast. Then, of course, we dive into the new Helloween album, some intricacies surrounding the return of two very prominent former members. We talk about a bunch of other stuff before we get to Michael Schenker. So here he is, Sascha Gerstner from Helloween.
Hello.
Sasha, how are you going?
Hi, Andrew. Hi.
I was, you're right, can you hear me?
Hold on one sec. There's, here we are.
Gotcha. I can't see you, but that's all right. We can still chat. All good.
Yeah, sure.
No worries. I was just, I was listening to the Helloween album, of course, but then I got onto Palast and I was really enjoying it, I've got to say.
Oh, really? And how did you find that?
Oh, just usual Googling. I always do that in preparation for interviews. But, gosh, it reminds me of Empire of the Sun in a good way. I say that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Empire of the Sun, but what you're doing there reminds me a lot of what Luke Steele and Nick Littlemore from Penyao are doing.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of people don't know that I'm doing that. So it's kind of an alter ego I was creating at one point, yeah. Nice that you like it, since it's so different, right?
Yeah, well, look, I'm a musician, and what I'm really saying there is I get into everything. Metal is just one of the things that I love and enjoy, and I
Same
dig.
Here.
Well, gosh, you can tell with what you're doing there. I dig what you're doing with the synth wave sounds. It's killer, like Kavinsky. You know, French artist Kavinsky. It reminds me of that too.
Yeah. You know what? The thing is, before I started playing guitar, I was into pop music and new wave a lot. So when in the age when you start listening to music consciously, you're discovering music, and at that part I didn't know about heavy metal or anything else. So I was more into pop music by that time in the 80s, and then also I discovered new wave and I liked what Gary Newman was doing with like the late 70s, early 80s synthesizer stuff, and I was fascinated by synthesizers and synthesizer music, and that's part of my musical core. And then when I was 13 years old, I started playing guitar, and then of course I got into all this like shredding and guitar hero stuff, and so I kind of lost it, but I always was into synthesizers.
That's great. It's killer to see somebody branching out and doing what it is that's in their heart, musically speaking. I've long felt that doesn't matter whether you're in a satanic black metal band like Watain, if this sort of music is within your spirit, within your soul, and that music is as well, do both. There's no rules.
Yeah. That's the thing, it's all about music, and also, who am I to tell someone what's good music and what's bad music, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think who is anybody, to be honest with you, but a lot of people try. God knows. Have you copped any stick from the metal fans? The battle jacket or battle vest wearing metal fans about doing Palast?
Oh no. Well, a lot of most fans don't know that I'm doing that. So I was kind of, building up this like new fresh band out of Berlin, and nobody even knew that I'm the guitar player in Helloween. So I would like be in a festival with this band playing, and then some other bands would come up to me and giving me tips and stuff. They would go like, "Oh well, we we started out at 1.2 and you're doing good. You're very professional and just keep doing what you do and you'll get there, and something. And I'll go like, oh, thank you. That's very kind of you, and they don't know that I'm the guitar player in Helloween. So it's quite funny too,
Has anybody done that and then you've said, you must have said it at least once. You said, yeah, I know, I'm the guitarist in Helloween, and they're like, oh shit, I'm so sorry.
No, I didn't. Of course, word goes around at one point. If one person knows, then it's kind of spreading. So over time, people get to know that it's me, and I don't know how they felt about it. But there's one funny story though, that I was playing a show with Palast, and then we went out to the merchandise to sign some stuff, and then these two girls came up to me and then they were like, well, you know what? You look totally like the guitar player in Helloween. And the other girl goes, no, that isn't him. He's much fatter.
And did you have to go on? What did you say to them? Did you say, I'm not going to be mean, sorry. I was going to say, did you say, yeah, no, that's Kai. I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. Like, I know he's not fat. I know he's not fat, by the way. But,
I was like, well, you know what? It's funny. I must check out this guy because some people were telling me that before that we kind of look alike, and I need to check out this guy. I was like that way. I didn't tell him that it's me. But it was quite funny because they were arguing about if it's me or not. So it was quite funny. So it's like being an actor. I kind of enjoy that I wasn't very sure about how the metal scene would take it, because a lot of people are very aggressive about looks and the genre itself,
Yeah.
So and so I was kind of planning it around when I came out with this in 2015. I was kind of okay. Let's do it with a second name, creating this alter ego. Nobody knows that I'm doing this. It's like starting out from zero, and then. People won't know, people won't blame, something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think most metal fans are pretty open-minded these days. It's not like what it was in the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s where it's metal or die. I think with
absolutely.
The best thing about the streaming era is that everything's available. Every bit of music virtually ever recorded and released by a label of even slight significance, so even a label that was started in someone's bedroom back in the 70s has a presence either on YouTube or through streaming. So, playlists these days veer from jazz to funk to punk to black and death metal to you guys. Nothing's off limits these days. I'd be very surprised, mate, if you copped any stick for what you're doing here, because the other thing, it's actually very good music. It's well written, and the first thing I started to think critically about what you were doing in Palast, and I thought, wow, some of these songs could be repurposed, or some of them, from a melodic perspective, they could easily be Helloween songs.
Kind of, yeah. There's a core in the songwriting. The sound is like the border here. You're having a range when I'm writing for Helloween. There's this range of sounds I can use, and I clearly can't come up with songs I'm doing for Palast, because then they would go, oh, that's nothing like Helloween. So it's more or less the sound, but of course the melodies and subjects and that's what you do, and then you have like this color or the visual aspect that gives it any direction, And then on the other hand, I have to say, as an artist, I kind of like that some bands or some artists are very traditional. If you take Maiden, for instance, Adrian Smith, he steps a bit over the line, if you want to say so, but they're all like sticking to what they're doing, and I respect that. But for me, it's like, because a lot of people were going, when is your solo album coming out? When are you doing any solo work? And then they expecting you to do something like Helloween, and I'm going like, okay, but that's what I'm already doing. My heart in that type of music or genre is fulfilled already. So it would be not a lot of fun for me to do that aside from Helloween, because everything I can give in that direction, I want to give to my band, and so it wouldn't have made sense for me to do the same thing with any other project at this point of time, Yeah. So I kind of respect that people stick to their roots but here's the thing. These are my roots. My roots are very mixed up. I started out listening to Phil Collins and Peter Gabriel from when I was very little on, It wasn't like rock and metal per se, So, and I kind of, due to the guitar playing, I kind of slipped into that scene, and that's how it went down. But in the core, there's so much variety in my music taste that I couldn't just stick to one thing. It would be not very fulfilling for my artist's heart,
Yes, indeed. So, look, let's talk about this album here. This is your 7th studio album, I believe, in Helloween. And there are many other live best-of collections and EPs that you've participated in since you joined the group. In time for Rabbit Don't Come Easy in 2003. But the new album, it's strong enough to be up there, I think, with Gambling with the Devil from 2007, which is a huge flex, by the way, of the band's power. Do you feel the same way?
What do you mean by flex?
You're basically demonstrating the power of the band. That what I said to, because I had a chat to Marcus last week, and I said it's very unusual for a band to come out with, I think it's probably the band's strongest album, to be honest with you, 14 or 15 albums into their career. But that's what happened with Gambling with the Devil, an album that you were a part of as well. But I've only had this self-titled album for a week or so, and I'm thinking it's almost as strong. So do you feel the same way?
Well, I gotta say, before we did this record, we had a very stable lineup, and that shows in a couple of records we did in between, so that we're used to each other. We had like this perfect machinery of writing songs and getting songs together, like forming albums, because we always would write a lot of songs, and then not all of them would end up on a record, but we always wanted to perfectionate the flow of an album. And then, of course, we had a peak with the Gambling with the Devil, because that was like the first album where we've been a real band, I would say. Because when you have like lineup changes, when I joined the band, there were like 2 drummers, and then Danny came into the band, and then we went on tour. And when you're going on tour, you get to know each other very well, and so it takes some time until you have this machinery going, and so you have a couple of peaks there in the records. But with this, of course, you have the addition of the old 2 new members again. It's more energy, of course. More people gives you more energy, and then also we kind of had the pressure to combine all eras of the band into one record, and it's a perfect how can you say that? It's a perfect combination of all the eras, and it's continuing what we did on the tour before. We went on a tour as a 7-piece, and then what I really liked is that Kai, for instance, he said like, hey, I don't want to have this kind of a 2-piece band. Like there's like this old lineup, and then there's this new lineup, and we split it up. Let's just play all the songs together. And I kind of like that idea, because that made us become a band. And that wasn't planned, it just came naturally. It was more of like going on tour for 2 years, figuring out a great set, and that kind of made us or led us into this album. At the end, we could clearly say, okay, let's do an album together, because it makes sense. We became a band. At one point we went on the tour. We went to our management, please, can we not call this Pumpkins United anymore? It's just Helloween. That's Helloween in 2019 or whenever it was, and and it made just sense for us to give that energy and feeling we had into this record, which makes it very strong, I think.
Yeah, and that's my point. It is a strong album, but I don't think it would have been easy, because when I spoke to Marcus, I did ask him about the return of Kai Hansen on guitars and vocals and Michael Kiske on vocals since their initial departures in 89 and 93, respectively. But of course, Andy, he's been the group singer for 27 years now, so you've got 3 lead vocalists. And Marcus mentioned that he wasn't present in the studio when a lot of decisions were made around who was going to take the lead vocal in certain songs. Now, I assume you were, because I know you've got a production and engineering background. So if you were in the studio, can you tell me how the band came to a decision about who would sing lead vocals on which parts in songs, and indeed on which songs?
Well, it was very natural. First you got to know is that Andy and Michael, they get along very well. It was like almost, I would say, love at first sight. So we didn't expect that to happen, like from the first meetings we had when we were talking about reuniting the band, and we of course you expect to get along with each other, and so you can do that, but especially these two are getting along very well. And then I have to say, Charlie Bauerfeind, our producer, he had a great idea. He did the same thing for vocals as he did for guitars. He was like, when I saw you live, there was this certain magic and energy happening, and then I wanted that to have on the record as well. So how are we going to do that? I want you all to record all of your ideas, everything you have, and in the end, I want to combine it to a point where I have the same feeling I have when I'm watching you guys live, because it's a perfect combination. We instantly, Kai and Mikey and me, we did the same thing with guitars before, just in a natural way. There were no fights about who's playing what, it was for the live set, it was a natural way, and we kind of, in a natural way, we kind of combined it. So it's very well balanced, and there was no ego or something coming up. And the same way it happened with vocals. So I think the tour laid down the basis of what we've been able to do on the album. And then also Charlie, who saw us live a couple of times, he wanted to have that feeling, and that was his core interest to the album. And that made it very easy for the singers and very easy for the guitarists to not fight over parts or whatever, because there was someone combining all that together,
It sounds easier than it probably was, but apart from what you were dealing there, or not dealing with, but the decisions that had to be made around the vocal slot, did you have any real challenges? Because of course the album would have been recorded during COVID and the lockdowns.
The album was recorded before that.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. COVID just hit us when we've been like in the last section of recordings and mix downs and stuff like that. So like the mixing sessions were happening by that time, but the recordings and the writing was happening before. And the challenge here, as I said before, was more or less how can we combine all eras onto one album and still keep the flow so that it sounds like a compact album, and not something like, oh, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, So that was a real challenge. And then also we had a lot of time, which made it easier for us, was that we went into pre-production, which we didn't do for a long time anymore. So we just spent more time concentrating on the songs to perfectionate the songwriting and the arrangements, and then for the recordings, the same thing. We were recording in 2 studios at the same time. So the guitar, normally you would start with drums. So we recorded drums in Hamburg, and then in the other studio where I was recording, after drums were done, we started with the guitars, and that happened kind of in a parallel manner. So I would start with the first 5 songs, and then Charlie would send them over to Hamburg, to the studio in Hamburg. So Kai would continue with those 5 songs while I'm recording the next one. And so we had the ability to work parallel on the same songs, kind of, and spending a lot of times crafting sounds and stuff like that, which makes it more easy. And, you know, before we had like any albums before, we had like 3 months to make a record and to go back on tour again. And this time we just spent much more time for everything.
Did you bring any songs completed or thereabouts, or the framework for any songs into the recording sessions? Or do you more or less rely on someone in the band who is considered the chief songwriter to bring in the framework, and you just sort of put meat on it, so to speak?
The good thing about Helloween is that we have a lot of songwriters. So what we basically always did, and we did for this album as well, is each songwriter would write songs. And then at one point, long before we're starting pre-production and everything, we would meet somewhere and play the demos to each other, you know. And the good thing is, you know, everybody has a studio at home. So when, for instance, when I'm writing songs, I would record everything I have on my mind, all the instruments. I would even sing on that, so that you would have all these versions with my voice on it. So the singers know what's the song about and how the melody goes and everything. So, and then what we did is we in early 2019, we've met in Hamburg and played demos to each other. So, and that's a nice moment, because, you know, you're working for yourself the whole time, and then at one point you meet, and then you're very curious about what the other guys come up with, you know. And then we would set up our stereo and then would play the songs, and the management would be there, and you know, and we all over the years it was like a big growing family with management and producer. You know, Charlie Bauerfeind, he's producing Helloween since I joined the band and the album before. And so it's a big family sitting there listening to the songs, and then you can kind of find out a tendency to what kind of songs the band is leaning to in the management and the producer. And then you have a core of songs you're saying, hey, let's work on this, you know. And that's always our way to do that. So everybody would write songs. And of course you have Andy, who's a brilliant songwriter. He's a songwriting machine. He can just shake off songs out of his body, you know, out of his mind. So
this is the second self-titled release by the group. Now, the first one was an EP in 1985, one of the first official releases. And now you've got this eponymously titled album. Would you say this is the band in some ways trying to bring things full circle?
I would say so. In a good way it is, because you know how we went down is we had a different title before, a working title, and then at one point when we listened to all the songs during the production, it was like, well, everything that's moved us in the last couple of years with the touring and the getting back together, and then also the relationship we have with each other, and then also combining all the singers and guitar players to a wonderful piece, you know. It just sounds perfect to say, hey, that's Helloween. That's what it is. It feels complete, you know. That's why we came up with this title. That's why we said, like, why not calling it self-titled? That's Helloween. You know, there was a start, and I wouldn't say this is the end, but this is like a beginning of a new era.
What's your favorite song on the album?
That's very hard to pick, and that's always a very good one, because also it's changing a lot. But what I like from the beginning, and I like that it's the opening track is "Out for the Glory."
Yeah, killer. Yeah, very strong. Yeah, very strong. What about when you get an opportunity to go on tour again? You remember how Iron Maiden did A Matter of Life and Death from go to woe, from beginning to end. Is there a temptation here to do something similar?
I'm not sure. I mean, we're not talking about the tour yet so much. We just started to collect ideas for a set list. And also, the last time we already did kind of this best of set, and it was almost 3 hours long.
Yeah, huge.
And it's quite hard with such a long history to make a show that's not too tiring for people. The last tour we didn't went out a lot with other bands, so it was just the most shows were just Helloween. So people would go there and watching a 3 hours Helloween show, which was a lot of energy, and it took you could clearly see people in 3 hours. It's really hard to keep momentum all the time, and so if I just imagine making a set from you would start something with Walls of Jericho and then you would end to where we are now. It's really hard to make a set. You would probably have to make 2 sets or something with a break in between, but there are no plans for that right now.
Yeah. It's we just don't know when the world is going to open up again, particularly to international travel. I know here in Australia, in the state of Victoria, it's just gone down into lockdown again, and no doubt that lockdown will be extended. So God knows when we're going to get out of this. But I remember, just to your point there about 3 hour shows, I remember suffering through a Paul McCartney gig, which was about 3 hours 20 minutes, I think it was. That was far too long.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I don't.
That's the point, I mean, people go out there and buying tickets to get entertained and having a getaway from daily work, Yeah. So I don't know. A show shouldn't be draining,
Absolutely. Did you see that up on stage, did you, from where your vantage point was? Could you see people sort of tune in and out of the gig, looking at their phone and then for 20 minutes and then sort of turn back to watching the band? Did you see that?
Well, no, not at our show, but but nowadays it's hard to tell because people watching their phone all the time, So it's kind of, no, I mean, for the set list we had the last time, it was just perfect. And still you have people nagging like, this song is missing and that song is missing, So you can't make it just right for everyone. But and then also, of course, we have to, the band is not like a band of 20-year-olds anymore either. You kind of have to give everything in a short amount of time. That's what I believe. It's just giving a lot of energy and giving a great show to the people and keep it as much entertaining as it can get. So I think 3 hours was like the longest we could make.
The limit, yeah. Hey, have I got time for 2 more questions, or have you got another call coming through in a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sweet.
It's fine.
I asked Marcus this question because so many bands have albums and themes, and I used Operation Mindcrime as the example with Queensryche. And for you guys, obviously, it's going to be the whole Keeper of the Seven Keys theme and series. Now, that's a blessing, but it can also be a burden. Do you feel a bit of that too, that fans always seem to expect, given that you did part 3 with The Legacy in 2005, I think it was? Do people hit you up or hit the band up on Facebook or what have you and say, when are you going to do part 4?
Well, there might be people being that way, but I'm kind of thinking from what I know about the reaction to this record now is that this is probably the part 3 everyone was expecting for a long time. Kind of.
Yeah.
Because it's such a strong record and it's the maximum we're able to give with this lineup, I'm just and also I have to say that during the years since I joined the band, when I joined the band, there was like a low point, kind of, the band did just the Dark Ride album, which went into a totally different direction. And then Mikey was like, hey, that's not the way it is. If you want to continue that way, I'm out. I wanna make the music that Helloween was supposed to do. And so Rapid Don't Come Easy was kind of a turn point into showing, hey, we're going more the traditional way again. And during the years, I could clearly tell that the audiences were going up, and the audiences became much younger. So a lot of fans, they joined the band when I was already there for a couple of albums, and so we now have like this beautiful fan base of almost 3 generations sometimes, depending on the region. But like in Germany, you have a lot of older fans. But if you go to Latin America, for instance, there are a lot of young fans in the audience who weren't there when Keeper 1 and 2 were happening. So that's kind of the plus side, of our band, that we have this wide fan base, and so I think there's no demand for a Keeper 4 album.
Yeah. No, I'm hearing it. Yeah, there shouldn't be after this anyway. It's kind of like the band's just going through midlife at the moment, and healthy middle age, if you like, with the strength of the albums.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I feel like.
Absolutely. And also your feeling is right, because we feel that ourselves, that it's like a new era. Michael Kiske said it many times, and so when he came back, he, of course we went on tour with Kai for a couple of times with the Hellish Rock tours, and we would always meet him here and there, but nobody was sure about how Michael would feel about being back in the band and being with us on tour. And he's so much integrated, and he loves us, and he says like, wow, that's a different band as it was before, like socially, from social aspect. And it feels really complete. It's like he was never gone, I think. And for me, it feels like something, there's no stranger here, like he's like, from the whole social aspect, he's a typical Helloween member, like the humor and everything that comes along with being part of Helloween. And so, yeah, it just feels right, and that's why I'm just thinking it's this new era, or this fresh breeze coming in. And what I'm receiving from journalists is they're saying the same thing, that everybody is receiving that what we've been into first.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I've been listening to the band since Master of the Rings, because I loved Where the Rain Grows. In particular, I'm a bassist, you see, so I love listening to Marcus's playing, and he's always been such a tasty bass player, hasn't he? Very overlooked in his contribution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like as though with you guys, it's as long as you guys want to keep on playing music there's always going to be that opportunity. But I'm going to change tact, and I'm going to ask you a completely different question now outside of Helloween. I've spoken to Michael Schenker about half a dozen times now, and I think he is beginning to become aware, I think, of his profound influence. But I think if anybody can help him cross over into a mainstream audience, for obvious reasons that we spoke about up top, it would be you. I would love to see you and him get together and do something featuring his guitar playing on music that sounds like Palast. What do you reckon?
Oh, well, you got to know that Michael Schenker has a huge influence on my guitar playing. So this was maybe like the first guitar hero, sort of, when I was starting guitar, who I was listening to. And that basically brought me into rock and metal guitar playing, because of his tone, Yeah. And see, that's the funny part, because I was just talking to our label boss, who is also releasing his albums. And I told him, You know what? At one point, because I'm here in Berlin, I work as a photographer and filmmaker. So I told him, well, you know what would be great if him and I would have a get together. I would take nice portraits of him, and then we would probably sit together, like in a documentary style, and playing a little bit guitar together and talking about, like me interviewing him, kind of. Just having like this nice get together and me taking like the visual aspect, taking pictures of him and playing guitar together, having that kind of sort of thing. That would be nice, So it's funny that you're asking that, because there are ideas about that already. I'm not sure if he knows about that, but yeah, as you said, I know Michael Amott of Art Jamie. He's a huge fan of Michael Schenker too. And he's very much influenced by him as well, and I think he's very underrated. And a lot of young guitar players should listen to what he does.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, the turn of the century gave me an opportunity to get into a lot of bands and artists that you couldn't really find through the 90s, because you could find their CDs very cheaply in second-hand stores and the like, and Michael was one of those guys. And I can hear he's playing. It's not just about Dave Mustaine and James Hetfield wearing Michael Schenker Group T-shirts in 1981. You can hear he's playing in from death metal to black metal. It's right across the board. But I'm with you. I don't think a lot of so-called mainstream journalists and the media give him the credit that is due. And I don't know how that can change. But yeah, it should change.
I think especially a lot of younger people are not really aware of his abilities and about his influence, because nowadays if you look at guitar players, it started that way already when I started playing guitar. It was all this like comparison to each other and playing faster and higher and all this stuff. But now it came to a certain point where it's almost Olympics, and then there Michael Schenker comes in, where I'm saying like, well, listen to someone whose guitar is just an extension of his body. He clearly can play pretty technical, maybe not as tech metal as the kids are into right now, but very technical at one point, and he made the perfect combination of like neoclassical and also blues, combining that to one style, and which you can listen to in a lot of metal bands nowadays. But his tone is not from this earth, I saw him in a couple of different shapes. So also when he was like on drugs and not in a good shape, but still, when you would stand there at a show and still when he hits like the right notes, and it just hits you in the heart, because he has this nice feeling and he's always playing fluently. It's like an extension of his body. It's more. I would say body, mind, soul connection to his instrument. Yeah. And a lot of young people don't have that. They're always using just their brain, to play an instrument. And it doesn't feel to me that it's coming from the heart. And I don't want to judge people too much, but I think you know what I mean. It feels to me that it's all about showing off skills and being very technical, and not about the music itself.
I think you're spot on. And just a bit about Michael there, I think you're right. There are videos out there where he wasn't in the greatest shape, and it was sad to see, because I think poor old Michael has suffered through his life, particularly through the breakdown of the relationship with Rudy. And I've spoken to Rudy about it, actually, and I've spoken to Michael about it too, and it doesn't look like there'll ever be a reconciliation there. But I think from a rock and metal fan's perspective, I always like to think, particularly people in my position, indie journalists, getting an opportunity to interview so many of the great leading lights of the genre. Michael's just one of those guys who has just been doing his thing for so long. And I've got to say now, I'd love to write his autobiography, ghostwrite it for him, because he has this story that I think once his story is told and people see him outside of the guy behind the guitar, it's going to make him far more relatable. And that's great too, mate, for you to be doing that portrait exercise that you're talking about there. I'd love to see that in like a GQ or one of those, those magazines that get very broad publication and they're in airports, that sort of thing. I'd love to see Michael in one of them.
Absolutely. That would be great. Also because I always feel like I wander in between two worlds, because for my age, I was listening to a lot of old music, very old music. Like people in school when I was young, they were not listening to any of this music. They were all into hip hop was coming up, and they were in techno, and then there was Nirvana and all that stuff happening. You know? So, but I was listening to old school music. I would listen to I don't know, old pop music and old rock music, and also Michael Schenker was kind of outdated by that time. Yeah, for kids my age, and so for me, it's like knowing all these old music, and then also I started with old Marshall amplifiers and playing the guitars and all that kind of stuff. I know about that, but also I'm a pretty modern musician using modern techniques and hanging out with a lot of younger people. So I'm kind of in between both worlds. Maybe you're right. Maybe that could be a good idea to kind of connect all that.
Yeah, if anybody can do it, it's you, because you have feet firmly planted in two worlds, but you're doing it. That's the thing. It's not like Palast is one of these bedroom projects. It's a legitimate project, and you're getting on international festivals, and you've got decent, very good videos, I've got to say, like high-tech videos with great visuals. So it doesn't I love that one where you're in the desert. That's a great video. Yeah.
You know what? The thing is, all the videos you're seeing, I'm doing that myself. So the whole video production, everything, because I sometimes I would stand there with a gimbal filming myself when I'm singing. and so every video of Palast you're seeing, it's basically it's me doing that, and at some point when I'm in the picture and it needs to be handheld, I give it to my assistant holding the camera, and but all the videos you're seeing, I'm doing myself. That's nice to hear someone from the scene liking those videos. It's fun. Yeah.
No, it's very good, Sasha. You're doing a great job, I've got to say, and there needs to be more of what you do. But,
thank you.
There's not going to be, mate. You're an outlier, as I call people like yourself. There's nobody out there doing what you do at the level that you do it in a killer band like Helloween, and then you've got this synth electro / rock project, I suppose. Given that it's chorus, verse, and sort of a setup there with that one there. But you're doing it, and look, I'll leave things there. Thank you so much for the conversation. Hope to see you guys down here. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great as soon as this stuff is over. I just hope that's the thing we're missing a lot as musicians, that to go on stage and playing, and also like the social interaction you're having with people. That night you're playing somewhere. It's really being missed.
That it is, and we miss you guys. We miss these wonderful bands. We miss even there's some local bands that are starting to play, but it's always great to see a Helloween or a big band come through too, because it brings all of the oldies out, brings all of the fans out that don't necessarily go to shows, and it gives it a bit of a buzz and a bit of a vibe. You know what I mean? Because you're at the centre of
absolutely.
it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Killing, mate. All right. Well, thanks so much for the conversation. Yeah.
Yes, same here, and thank you for checking out all the stuff I'm doing. I was kind of surprised.
Well, hopefully there's more of it. No, keep doing both as long as you can, man. I'm enjoying it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, brother. No worries. See ya.
All right.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Well, there you have it, the conversation featuring Sascha Gerstner from Helloween. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, go across to scarsandguitars.com, where you'll find 600 more just like it. Something else, I'd truly appreciate it if you could like, subscribe and share. Go across and like my Facebook page and my Instagram page. That all helps out. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.